When we can find a way to truly communicate with others by utilizing our true voice, we create a breakthrough, and the possibility of actual healing takes place in that moment.
Hello, and welcome to the Jocelyn Moore Show. I'm your host, Jocelyn Moore, and as always, we're here to inform, inspire, and entertain with dynamic conversations that matter. Today, we're exploring Healing Through Truth with Dr. Fred Moss, psychiatrist, mental health advocate, speaker, podcaster, and author. Welcome to the show, Dr. Moss.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah.
Dr. Moss, to start us off, before you became a psychiatrist, did you ever consider a different career path?
Yeah, I guess I did. I was always interested in learning how to talk to people. And I noticed yesterday, I drove about 400 miles yesterday from Ventura, California, up to where I live here in Grass Valley, California. And I noticed how much I loved, there was a time that I thought that even driving a truck was a good idea. I thought that being an OTR truck driver would give me an opportunity to see how the world really functions, that somehow I love driving. And so, the world that just occurs when you drive. And so I thought about being a truck driver. And then I also thought about being like a bartender, same kind of thing, sort of a casual way, to really work with, to work with meeting people and having great conversations. And this is what I've been interested in the whole time. So those were probably a couple of the things that I considered. I also considered being a restaurant owner. I've made pizzas when I was a teenager, and I still consider that, like on the back end, maybe after the psychiatric career is over, opening up a organic coffee shop, or opening up a really high quality pizza place. All of those things seem like great places to be of service to people and then meet a lot of people as well.
Like being a bartender, you sit there, people would tell you their sorrows, what they're going through, and you're there to listen to them, right? And maybe, it's part of being around people, just like you said, talking to them. That's very good. That's very good.
Yeah.
Well, I'll ask you this. When you were coming up, when you were a little child, were you very friendly child who would always go to it, have a conversation with someone? In other words, you weren't afraid to speak to someone, to make friends with someone, in other words.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that for the most part, I was not afraid. There was nothing to be afraid of. I was deeply interested in learning how the other side lived. If my mom told me don't go into that neighborhood, I definitely went into the neighborhood.
Of course.
And, don't ride your bicycle past that point. I would definitely ride my bicycle. I hitchhiked a lot. I really found that, I'd throw caution to the wind. It seemed like somehow we didn't think of it being so dangerous back then, but I would just meet people from all walks of life. I was just deeply interested in meeting people different than me.
Right, it's true. Well, things are sort of different today. It's not like it was years ago. A lot has changed over the years.
Yeah.
A lot has changed. Can you briefly talk about your book, Find Your True Voice?
Sure. So Find Your True Voice is a book that I wrote to help people see that, we pretend to be somebody that we're not. And we do that. We were talking earlier about that being ourselves. We pretend to be somebody that we're not in order to protect the person that we are. And so what Find Your True Voice is about is helping people wipe away the things that are preventing them from being their core, authentic, genuine self. We have learned how to say things a certain way, or look a certain way, or not say things in certain situations. And those things are not necessarily aligned with who we really are in this lifetime. We become afraid of actually exposing our basic self. And in that process, we make up a person. We end up pretending to be someone that we're not. So Find Your True Voice is a methodology. It's a recipe book for moving the things out of the way that are in the way of you actually being your authentic true self in your interactions with others.
Okay, I'm going to ask you this question. In your book, Creative, 8, how do simple creative acts like music and writing help people express their true voice?
Well, it turns out that there's multiple ways of communication. So our most conventional way of communication is like what we're doing today, where one of us talks and the other one listens and we process, and then we come up with an answer, and then we talk and they listen and they process and we process. And that's one way to communicate. It's not the only way to communicate. So in the world of creativity, there's many different forms of performance art, and there's many different forms of visual art, like art and music and dancing and singing, drama, cooking, writing, gardening. These are things that we can use to communicate effectively with others without necessarily using the conventional means of just, speaking. And in that process of learning how to communicate using other means, we're given access to other pathways to freedom, because most of the psychiatric or psychological problems that people are having are a function of their difficulty they're having communicating with others. So most of them, not all of them, but almost all of our what we call mental health problems are manifest with our difficulties in communicating with others. And so when we can find a way to truly communicate with others by utilizing our true voice, we create a breakthrough and the possibility of actual healing takes place in that moment when we resonate with each other and harmonize with each other. And I think we'll all agree that nothing is more profound than meeting somebody who actually gets you. That sometimes we actually marry that person. Somebody
True.
comes in our life, and if they get us and if we resonate with them, we call that love. And there's a tremendous amount of healing there.
I never thought about it before till I was reading up about you when you said your true voice with different music, movement, dancing, writing, art, gardening, cooking. It's like you were saying. You had listed 8, but there could be a lot more than that.
It does. It goes on and on. It's endless. Our job is to somehow be um, interact or interchange or interrelate with other people, and we do that by listening carefully, but not just to their words, who they are in their self-expression, through their art, through their music, through their dancing, through their unspoken words, the nonverbal communication. And we can help ourselves by helping others, meaning that when we go in there to actually resonate with another person, we get to help our truest self as well. And we heal in that same process. There's not like a healer and a healed. There's like both of us are indeed healing in the process of connecting with each other.
Basically, that's what you're saying. It could be a healing process.
Exactly. It is a healing process. And it's good for everyone. It's like something that becomes available when we take the time to move ourselves out of the way and come in tune with other people using our harmonic influence.
What's one thing you do every day to make sure that your own voice is heard? What do you do?
Well, I think that, what I have to do every day is I have to wake up, in the morning. We all wake up and there's a little space of being disoriented that happens at first thing in the morning where, why do I get up? What's the point? Why am I, who am I? What do I do? Who's next to me? All those questions we get to ask every morning. And I do that. And then I immediately do my best to go into my morning routine. And my morning routine includes a gratitude list. Like, this is the first thing, and I find this to be a great way to launch, meaning that I list 10 things out loud that I'm grateful for. And since my wife is almost always lying next to me, she's number one on the list. And then after that, I might list my cats, or maybe I'll split up my 3 cats into 3 different choices. So now I have 4 things. Or maybe I'll just say my cats, and that's the second thing. Then there's food, and then there's coaches, and then there's friends, and then there's my work, and then there's the sun, and then there's the moon, and then there's, the fact that I have a job, and then there's my podcasting. And right there's 10 things, and I've done that. And so I set myself up with the things in the world that are, that are pleasing to me, that are helping me create a relevance for my whole personhood. Like, what is my existence about? And after that, I try to step outside and get a view of what the world looks like. We are under the illusion, many of us, that the world takes place inside of our 2 ears, and that, or maybe takes place inside of our 4 walls. But in fact, the world takes place in a much bigger stage and called the world. So when I step out and get a breath of fresh air and really see the infinite nature of the world, that also expands me and allows me to step into a world that makes some sense. Like, allows me to see that there's so much room for me to express and grow and be my true self. And then I do some meditation, whether it's standing meditation or sitting meditation. I do some meditation so that I can get grounded and realize that I am magnificent. Like, I let myself know I'm magnificent. And I also let myself know that my experiences, my thoughts, my feelings, my sensations, the circumstances are not who I am. I'm having all those things, but I don't have to collapse myself into being any one of those things.
Uh-huh.
And I help myself see that there's some freedom and ease in, like, courage in being myself. I don't have to pretend to be somebody else at all. I can actually be myself, and I see the value of that having gone through the early morning routine. I have a remedy that I take. I have a homeopathic remedy that I take in the morning. I like doing that. And I get a cold shower in very early in the morning, too, soon after the meditation, where I step into the shower and do 8 runs through, as cold as the shower can get. And this is another revitalizing, reaffirming, resetting, re-optimizing my life through having a cold shower.
Uh-huh.
It's amazing what the return on investment is for a cold shower. It's not that hard. I know it sounds kind of yuck, but in truth, when we do it, it's like so rewarding. And I haven't missed a cold shower in over 3 years. I do one
Whew.
every single day, including today. I already did mine. And then, I step in, and then I be careful about what I'm eating and what I'm drinking. And all of these things, when I land myself into a space where I can move aside the things that are in the way of who I know I am, then all that's left is who I am. And I get to step into being my true self and speaking my true voice. And how do I know that? When I'm not stuttering and not thinking so hard about what to say next, and I'm just saying what's so for me at the very moment, that's when I know that I'm really actually being honest to myself and presenting an authentic, genuine, pure core self, center self.
I think some people are afraid to be themselves sometimes because they're afraid what other people might think of them, and you have to get over that.
That's right. You do.
Right. You do. That could be a hinder to you as a person. That
Yeah,
could be a very
one of the things that we can say that is can be very helpful with this idea of being afraid is you can say that how people think of me is none of my business. Like, I am
uh-huh.
not in charge of how people think of me. Maybe they like me, maybe they love me, maybe they don't like me, maybe they hate me. Uh, I don't have any. Okay, I don't need to be overtly affected by how people see me. And that goes on both sides. Even if they adore me, that doesn't mean that I need to, like, come off my center. I can be, okay, that person adores me and that person there doesn't like me at all. Completely okay, not my business.
And it's like you take the power back.
Exactly, 100%.
You take the power back. And half the time the person that even think about you, if you give all this power to that person. Right.
Exactly. Yeah, it's amazing. Us humans have some funny habits, for sure.
Yes, we do about that. I'm gonna go back to the cold shower for a minute. I was in the shower one day. It was cold. I jumped right back out. I can't stand, I can't stand the cold. Maybe one day I might try. I don't know. That's kind of.
Yeah, I can give you and your listeners a recipe for how to do this. So you don't walk into a cold shower. That's a little bit too
That's
hard.
what I thought
So,
you meant.
yeah, what I do is I walk into a warm shower in the morning and
Oh.
get myself a little bit acclimated to a warm shower. Maybe I'll soap up a little bit or whatever. And then I look at that knob and I turn it all the way down from warm to cold. And so it gets cold over the next 3 or 5 seconds. It's very, very manageable. And then I personally stay in there for about 3 minutes. I do 8 runs where I go in, turn around, get onto my front, then a back,
All
and
of,
that's called one cycle. And then I do that for 8 cycles. And it's fantastic.
When did you start doing that, though? I mean, like how long ago did you start doing that? But the cold shower and all that.
I think the shower thing is about 3 or 4 years old. So
Uh-huh.
I wasn't doing it my whole life, but someone introduced it to me, and I immediately saw the value. It does, wake you up, and it optimizes your life and regenerates and revitalizes and resets life in ways that are really unexpected.
Well, I tell you one thing, it will wake you up.
Yeah. And you do a lot more painful things than a cold shower every day. It's not that painful ultimately. It's just water.
It's just water. Okay. What's the biggest lesson you learned? We read that you work at a mental health facility. You dropped out of college, then you worked at one for adolescent kids. What was your experience there? What was going through your mind?
Well, I had dropped out of college. I wanted to learn how to communicate. I was very much interested in communicating all the way from when being a little child. And I thought I was going to learn that at school. But as school went on, my elementary school, they taught me to just sit down, be quiet, and do what the teacher says.
Oh,
And then it got worse in junior high and even worse in high school. So I decided I'd try college. So I went to the University of Michigan, and it was even worse in the classrooms there. It was like there was no discourse. And I liked Ann Arbor. I learned a fair amount about communication in the city, but not in school. And eventually I realized that school wasn't for me. So I dropped out, and I got on a bus and took that bus all the way to Berkeley, California, and figured out trying to figure out what my life was about. I had a great summer, but it was unsustainable. And then my mom and my older brothers, they convinced me that there was this new industry that I might be really good at, and that I had the aptitude for, and maybe I would be effective. And that industry was called computers. And so the biggest computer, and really the only computer in Michigan at the time, was back at the University of Michigan. So back to school I went, and this time, taking on computer science as a possible major. But I only lasted for about a term or maybe 2 because punch cards and batch jobs and all that, it was like, no, I'm not going to do
wasn't
this the
you?
rest of my life either. Not at all.
Uh-huh.
So I dropped out a second time and kind of swore that I would not go back to school again. And that's when I got the application for the state mental health facility for adolescent boys. Now, what you ask what was going through my mind, what was going through my mind is that they were paying me $13 or $14 an hour, which was more than I ever had seen before, and that I would stay for 3 weeks. That was what was on my mind, because orientation was only 3 weeks long, and I had no interest in going to the floors. I just felt like I could get paid for orientation full-time for 3 weeks. I get 3 checks, and then I get those checks, and I buy myself a car and go drive around the country and sure enough, figure out what my life was about.
Right.
The 4th week, my friend Paul, who later became a really close friend, he convinced me to go up to the floors. And I went up to the floors, and finally there was an opportunity to communicate effectively and get paid for it. I began to realize that what I really needed to do was connect with these so-called children who were only like 5 years younger than me. And by connecting with them, healing would take place for both of us. But not just for me and the client, but me and the client, and then the whole unit would feel something about the authentic, core resonating frequency of a human connection, and people were just getting better, myself included. What I didn't like about it was, psychiatry. I hated the direction that psychiatry was going. I could tell that the psychiatrist's job, for the most part, at least in the hospital setting, was to restrain the patients, like physical restraints or chemical restraints. If they were out of line, if they were up too late or getting in a tussle with each other, then we would pack them full of drugs or even other restraints. Now, you say, ooh, but, you should know that this is going on every single day still. There's been no days since that time that it's even slowed down. Hundreds of people have been restrained already in psychiatric hospitals today. For sure. Hundreds, literally hundreds of people have been placed in physical restraints or given chemical restraints, cocktails, so that they no longer could actually express themselves openly because someone decided that the way that they were doing it was wrong or dangerous. And sometimes, look, sometimes it is dangerous. But the idea of injecting someone so that we can quell them, so that we can put them, like create a stupor for them so they're no longer doing what we don't want them to do, that did not seem right for me. And so I wanted to I knew that communication was even a more effective way to quell people from their, untoward behavior. And I wanted to bring communication into that field. So I chose to go back to school a third time and finish my degree, and then get into medical school and finish that degree, and then go and get a residency and then finish that, and then go get a fellowship and then finish that. And when I graduated 9 years later, I had, I was now a psychiatrist with a board certification, and I was also a child and adolescent fellow.
Okay. When you were top of my tongue, when I wanted to ask you, the patients that you had over the years, have they contacted you, say that you really have helped me in my life? If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be the person that I am today.
I had not really had any contact with the clients back in those days. That's a good question, because they were only 5 years younger than me. That group is now like 60 something. And it's amazing when I think about that, that that group at Fairlawn Center that I had from 1980 to 1985, some of them are 60 years old, and I haven't heard from them. But I remember some of their names, and I would love to hear more about what they're up to. I should really look them up on Facebook and try to track them down.
You never know. They might be thinking about you. You just never know
It's
what
true.
you have done for them. You just
Yeah.
never know how you can help people.
Yeah, that's true.
With over 40 years in the field, how does healing through truth mean to you now?
Well, it's the only way. It's the only way to heal. You're not going to heal through any other way. I mean, ultimately, that's what we need is truth. If we're having some ailment or some pain or discomfort, if we're feeling unpleasant or miserable, or if we're feeling offline or confused, one of the things that we can do is come to grips with our truth and then share it with another person. I don't know a more powerful form of healing. I do know that psychiatry is not necessarily built to manage that. It may have been in the past, but it's not built to manage that. The truth be told is that psychiatrists aren't even taught how to interview people in medical school anymore. They're not taught on how to do therapy anymore. They're just taught on how to get information and treat the client like they're a machine by giving them a diagnosis, just like you do with your car, and then giving them a treatment just like you do with your car. But the automobile model does not apply to humans at all, but we still treat humans as if it does. And so when I can get your truth as, just a truth of choice, and then my truth as well, then we get to resonate together. And through that, well, that's where profound and electric healing can take place.
Just like you said about the truth, that's right. That's the number one thing. You have to accept the truth. If
The
you
truth is
can't,
really
you
important.
can't go on.
Yeah, some people they try to alter the truth. They don't like the way the truth is going, so they actually change
That's
the
not
story
good.
and try to pretend that it isn't the way it is. But that doesn't work very well, because it is the way it is.
That's true. And the truth is the truth, as they would say. Dr. Moss, in your view, what's the trade-off on heavy medication versus focusing on true healing?
Well, medications aren't even meant to heal. Medications aren't even marketed to heal. They don't talk about healing. You don't see people getting a mental health diagnosis and then saying they used to have one, but they don't anymore.
Right.
Because, mental health is such a way, at least the way the theory goes, is that when you're given a diagnosis, you now have that for the rest of your life. And the medications that get utilized when you have a condition don't work. They don't do what they're supposed to do. They reliably don't do what they're supposed to do. They're built to actually cause or increase or induce or perpetuate the actual symptoms that they're marketed to treat. If you really want healing, the best way to do that is to connect with another person.
Because the medication, it just subdues you, just keep you quiet.
Well, you know what it does, though? It actually makes things worse. If all it did was neutralize and just quiet us down, that might not be so bad. But that isn't what it does. It neutralizes, quiets down, and then proceeds to make the condition worse.
You never get healed that way.
That's right. Of course
You
not.
never get healed. You
Yeah,
have a lot of
the system is not counting on you to be healed. They're counting on you to be, a lifetime customer.
It's not there to heal. It's not there to heal you at all.
That's right.
It makes you keep coming back for
That's right.
more and more and more, right?
Right. And then they cause whatever sort of ulterior symptoms as well, sometimes known as side effects, but they're not really side effects, they're effects. And ulterior symptoms then have you go to a doctor who now notices something that's happened as a result of you taking medicine and decides that he's going to give you a different medicine to address that. And now you get a second medicine, and then you're going to have another effect from that medicine or from the combination of the two medicines. And you come back in a month and you got something else going on. And now you're on a third medicine. And before too long,
on the fourth.
You're on a whole pharmacy of medicines. It fries your brain, so you no longer can have the experience that you were having that was uncomfortable. It basically burns out your brain, so you cannot have that experience anymore.
Let's talk about children right now. When children act out, what's the truth about what they communicate with you, and how can parents best listen?
So the way to hear somebody is actually move yourself out of the way and become entirely curious about what their life experience is. So when I'm listening to somebody, I'm listening not only to their words, I'm listening to their body language, to how they're moving, what they're saying, how they're listening, what their eye contact is. And with all that, we can start realizing that sometimes when we don't feel like we're communicating, when we're trying to communicate, when we're giving an effort to communicate with someone, but it doesn't work, there's nothing that different between adults and kids. I'm not even sure what day a kid becomes an adult.
Looking back on your 40-plus years in the field, what is the single important message or idea you hope people will remember about your work?
Yeah, so the way I normally answer this question is that just reminding people that there may be nothing wrong with you. That just because you're uncomfortable, just because you're miserable, just because you're in pain, just because you have discomfort, just because you're, you feel misaligned, that doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. That's part of being human. And then the other thing that I think is really important, which I think some people really overlook, is that finances are really important. When we start looking at different ways that money really works and start really teaching people about financial literacy, we can change people's lives from the ground up, more profound than anything that psychiatry has ever done before, by giving them access to it, to some security and some assurance that their money's in the right place and is growing and even has a possibility of creating generational wealth for our children and our children's children down the way. So
let's talk a little bit about maybe about 3 minutes about your show, your podcast. Tell us about that.
Yeah, my podcast, I've done 3 podcasts before. I think I have 300 dropped episodes. The first one was Welcome to Humanity, and I met some great people and had wonderful conversations. And then the second one I did was called Insanity. That's 2 words, Insanity. And then the third one was called The Healthy Healer. It was fun being a podcast host. These days, I'm spending a little bit more time being a podcast guest.
Well, about your books, where can people purchase your books if they're interested in?
Yeah, so if you go to my website, drfred360.com, that's drfred360.com, you can get access to a couple different, or you can purchase my book on, my Creative Aid is on Amazon, and my Find Your True Voice can be purchased by going to findyourtruevoicebook.com.
Doc, I want to thank you very much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. I hope everyone does too.
Thank you. It's been a deep pleasure.
For our viewers at home watching, if you like what you see, subscribe to The Jocelyn Moore Show. Want to be a guest on our show? Head over to our website, www.jmentertainment.info. On the homepage, click on About and follow directions to be a guest. If you have any questions about today's show or past or future shows, just click Contact on our website and submit a message. Thank you for tuning in, and until next time, take care and keep watching.